Hi, friends. Today I'm going to talk to you about a very interesting subject. And this paper is a meta analysis of 51 different studies that have reported rotational stability with many different IOLs with many different haptic designs. So, if you are a surgeon implanting toric IOLs, probably you have this in the top of your mind which kind of haptic designs are most rotationally stable. And the study have actually categorized these haptic designs into four broad haptic designs. The group A belongs to the loop haptics. The loop haptics over here, that is the group A over here. So you could also say as open loop haptics IOLs. This group B is actually about the plate loop haptics IOLs. So they have an open loop, but they have a plate shape, right? So plate loop haptic IOLs is about the group B. The group C is categorized into the traditional plate haptic IOLs, right? These are the plate haptic IOLs that belongs to group C, and group D is the double loop haptic IOLs. So they have loop, but they have double loop haptic IOLs, group D. So after analyzing 51 studies, this group reported a mean rotation of 2.36 degrees. All haptic designs taken together, all the toric IOLs that they have studied from these 51 studies, the mean absolute rotation was 2.36 degrees, right? And here, actually, in this table, I have highlighted those studies which have reported rotational stability loss of over 2.36 degrees. As I said, 2.36 is the mean absolute rotation of all the 51 studies. But those studies that have actually reported mean absolute rotation of more than 2.36 degrees I've highlighted over here. Let me go to the summary of this over here. So as you remember, this four group of haptic designs. Now, out of this 51 studies, there are a few studies that reported accuracy of rotational stability with accuracy of IQ. If you take a mean of that, the rotational stability loss will be 2.55 degrees with the accuracy of IQ toric lens. With the Technis toric lens, which is the new version is the Technis toric 2. But the older version was the Technis, which is the difference is that you don't have the frosted design with the Technis older version. That reported a 3.11 degrees of rotational stability loss. While the Technis Toric 2, which has the frosted edge, has a frosted edge over here. So the haptic has a rough surface, you could say, and that probably lends more amount of rotational stability to this lens. That reported 1.01 degrees of mean rotational stability loss. That seems to be the lowest among all the 51 studies IOLs that has been reported. The next group is the plate loop haptic IOLs at an average rotation of 1.91 degrees. And as an example, you can take the Rayner. And if you go into the Rayner side, this is how the haptic design looks like over here. It has a plate loop haptic design. So that actually reported around 1.91 degrees. But remember, it is not just an average rotation value of Rayner plate loop. It is the average rotation, mean absolute rotation of all the studies that reported with plate loop haptics, Rayner as well as other lenses. The third group is the pure plate haptic lenses, the traditional plate haptic lenses. Zeiss 709 MP belongs to this category. They had a mean rotational stability of 3.32 degrees. So rotational stability loss of 3.32 degrees. Now this is important because you know that 1 degree of rotation leads to a loss of 3.3% of the toricity loss. Remember, the 51 studies average mean absolute rotation was 2.36 degrees. So on an average, you have a 7 degree of toricity loss with an IOL, right? So with the group C, which has the plate haptic lens, of which Zeiss 709 MP, for example, is a design. Let me show you the design of this lens 709 MP. The difference between AM and MP is that one is preloaded, the MP is preloaded. So this is basically the shape of the plate haptic lens. It is a 6 and 11 millimeter lens. This had a rotational stability loss of 3.32 degrees. And in the group D, you have probably one of the best, rotational stability records This group is the one with the double loop haptic design. For example, the fine vision POD, which had a mean rotation of 1.53 degrees, and optic 565, which had a mean rotation of 1.95 degrees. Let me show you. This lens is also the fine vision. This is basically a hydrophilic lens, but it has a double loop haptics, right? And that might help in more amount of rotational stability. But there is a limitation. Before I finish, let me show you the limitation of the study. The limitation is that, they did not make a distinction between misalignment and rotation, absolute rotation and misalignment. What does a misalignment means? If you had to put the toric IOL at 90 degree, did you put it at 90 degree or did you put it at 92 degrees? If you have put it at 92 degrees and then you measure the rotational stability and you find that post-operatively it has rotated to 94 degrees, then your absolute rotation is 94 minus 92, 2 degrees. But this meta-analysis did not make a distinction, probably because this is a meta-analysis of many different studies, and those studies may not have reported that distinction. I hope you find this interesting. Do subscribe to my channel over here for more interesting forthcoming videos.